Welcome to the McBiffle Play Network. This is Dr. Omnibus. After a few people had watched my custom-bound hardcover episodes, in which I bound a bunch of single issues of comic books, several people asked for a video showing how to do the same thing with trade paperbacks. I've never actually done it before, but I decided that I would go ahead and do it anyway. So I'm going to try to learn this and at the same time teach you guys how to do it. So I'm going to bind the first 4 trade paperback volumes of Justice League from New 52. You may notice this is only 3. I did a practice run on removing the cover on volume 1 already to make sure that I could figure out how to do that before I tried to teach you. So that went well. Without further ado, I will show you that process and then carry on with the rest of the binding. Alright, so what we want to do is get the covers off of these trade paperbacks. There's a couple of reasons that you want to do that. One is that if you leave the covers on while they're in the book, they're constantly going to be trying to close on themselves, like trade paperbacks tend to do. And you can just not have to deal with that. And the other reason is the glossy material that these covers are made out of probably don't deal with adhesive very well. Like the adhesive won't dry and stick to it like you want it to, so your book would fall apart. So what we're going to do is take the blow dryer, heat up the spine. Once we've got it pretty hot, that glue will start to melt, and you can open up the book, grab the block of pages, and hold down the cover and pull on it, and it will start to separate. As you can see here, you can already get a little bit, but without actually heating the spine, it's just going to be a big mess. So I'm going to go ahead and heat it up, and I'm explaining that all now because once I turn this blow dryer on, you probably won't hear anything I say. And one thing of note, you might want to wear gloves while you do this. The blow dryer gets fairly hot, at least mine does, and it gets pretty uncomfortable. So halfway through this process, you'll see me turn down the heat on the blow dryer once I've got this good and hot, and I'm getting my hands in it because it does kind of suck. So yeah, but I'm not going to wear gloves. So here we go. Now, while I was doing that, this first page came loose, which is something that I would anticipate because this first one is kind of tipped on a little bit different than the rest and is glued directly to the cover, whereas all the others are not. So this one takes a little more pressure, and it's not a story page, so I'm not too worried about it. When I put this in, I'm probably just going to take the sheet off, and I'll probably do the same with the back. As you can see, it did that. But if it was a page that you wanted to keep, you could always put a little spot of glue on this edge and just glue it right back on there. But I actually chose these trade paperbacks because a different set that I wanted to do had story pages as the last page, and so I knew that there was a great chance of damaging that last page, and I just didn't want to deal with that. So that's that. Now I'm going to get into actually binding these once I get the other covers on. Alright, so I decided that I do want to keep these front pages on, which came loose while I was taking off the covers, because throughout these trade paperbacks, there's no cover art. So just as a way to help me keep track of where I am in the book when I'm reading it, I want these pages that say Volume 3 and Volume 4 and things like that. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little spot of glue along this edge here, and then lay that page back down, line it up properly, press it down a little bit to make sure that it stays where I want it. I've gone over a similar process in my videos about binding single issues, but I'm going to go ahead and just show you all anyway. So I'm taking a scrap piece of paper. This is actually the cover from Volume 3, which I'm not going to use for decoration. So I'm going to use that as a straight edge and a shield, because I want to get just the tiniest sliver of glue on this page. I'm going to dip my brush in the glue just a tiny little bit. It really doesn't take much for something like this. Maybe a little bit more. Take your straight edge away. Put the page in place, run your finger down the spine to get it where you want it, and give that a minute to dry. I've got a fan here behind me, so I'll let it help a little bit. Blow on there. And check the back page on this one. It's not severely damaged. So I'm just going to freehand this one a little bit. There. So those are non-story pages. So if I get a little excess glue on it, it's not the end of the world. I'm not creating gutter loss in a place that I care about. So I'm not too concerned about cutting that little corner there. So that one's done. Now I'm going to go through and do that on the other ones. So part of the reason that these pages came loose, or at least what I observed, was that my blow dryer was blowing with enough force that it actually caused some separation. So if you have a highly adjustable blow dryer and you can set it to blow at a low velocity but at a high heat, that would probably be ideal. I don't know if such a thing exists. For those of you that have actually seen my head, you know that there's probably not a whole lot of blow drying going on. Alright, so those are all glued up now. So I'm going to let this glue dry a little bit more, and then I'm going to stack them on top of each other. Alright, these have had a few minutes to dry, and I'm going to get a little more glue out. And we're going to glue these together. So I've got them stacked nice and neat here. needlessly because I need to take them all apart from each other. But ultimately, after we do this gluing, we do want them stacked nice and neat again. So, just like in the last portion, we just want a little sliver of glue here, but a little bit more than last time, maybe an 1/8 of an inch on here. So these are going to connect 2 non-story pages, so we should be okay with the additional gutter loss. But we really want to make sure that they hold together. And so I said an 1/8 of an inch. You could be looking at this and saying that is way more than an 1/8 of an inch. But the first 1/8 of an inch on there is all the glue, the pre-existing glue from the original binding. And so I want the glue actually on the page a little bit. And then, once you have it there, I highly recommend doing this beforehand. You want to get that stacked up on there again. And you really want this to be lined up well, so that you get a nice straight pile going on with even edges. That way it'll look a little bit more like your standard hardcover when you're done. Just gonna leave that with some pressure applied for a moment before I move on to the next one. While I do that, maybe I can separate these 2 volumes. Which, yeah, they stuck together a little bit from the pre-existing glue. Alright, now get our guard in place. Double check to make sure I'm putting the correct volume there. Definitely want these to be in the right order. Although, you could undo this process by reheating it. So if you did put one in the wrong place, it would not be devastating as long as you noticed before you put it all together. So once you've got it in the case, there's no going back. Now I am going to go ahead and clean this up a little bit more. This is where I want the glue. These little fragments of cover that remain got to go. Tearing that page a little bit, but that's okay. Like I said, that's where the glue's gonna go, so I'm not too concerned about that. Now we've got all 4 volumes lined up and glued together. I am going to clamp these together for a little while. You can use clamps like this. If you do put something like a board across here and across the bottom, because these will leave an indentation in the book if you do not. But I made this. Unfortunately, I made it a little too small for the way I want to do it, but it's just a clamp with some added support back here. So I can stick the book through there. And then I can clamp this down. So this would actually be a really great tool if I had used the right dimensions. But I was not thinking properly. I actually made this before I ever made a custom bind, so my lack of experience really didn't help me out there. And now I'm going to get a board to put here, and then I'll slap a clamp on there. And then I will come back to it tomorrow, and I will apply glue, a ton of glue on here, and then put a sheet of this on there, which will be used to attach it to the case. And the process for making the case is the same as can be seen in my my videos about binding single issues, so I'm not going to do that again. I mean, obviously I'm going to do it. I'm not going to film it though. You can go back and watch those videos if you would like or need a tutorial on that process. Alright, so I left these clamped down for a couple of nights just because I was busy, so I'm just now getting back to it. And it seems like with just a little bit of glue that I put on the spine here and the small amount of glue that I put in between each volume, it seems like it holds together okay. Like I can turn from volume 1 to 2, and you know, it holds together pretty well. And let's turn from 2 to 3. Yeah, so same deal at 2 to 3. You know, it's holding together. I do want to reinforce that a little bit more though. So I'm going to put another several layers of glue on the spine here before I put the meslin on. And while I do that, I'm going to think about whether or not I want to put a more sturdy end sheet on here. I think I will. And as I'm filming this, the whole country is locked down with a coronavirus situation. So I don't know that I'll be able to go get the paper that I need. But I wasn't going to film that part anyway, because I've covered how to do that on one of my previous installments. So I'm just going to get some glue out, slap it on here over and over and over again, and that's pretty much all I'm going to show until I have this done, and then I'll show the finished product. Let's see if I can open my glue. You know, it's always very hard to open the first time. loosen up the bristles on my brush a little bit. Apparently I didn't clean it well enough after my last use, but that's okay. This glue is water soluble, so you could always get your brush cleaned up better later. It's just a little more work once it's dried. But if you run enough hot water through it, it'll be all right. So I'm gonna go pretty thick on here. I would like to be able to see a pretty good depth to a good amount of depth to the glue when I'm done, kind of like you do on the individual trade paperbacks. In between the cover and the pages, you can see there's like a 1/16 of an inch of glue in between the cover and the pages. I don't know the best way to achieve that other than just doing layer after layer after layer. I'm sure that I could set it down in glue, but I don't know the logistics of doing that. I think I'll be able to get it done like this. Alright, so I made the case and put it all together. Dried up glue there. And it turned out pretty well. I have no major concerns with it. Ended up using the cover of volume 1 for the first end sheet. Just tipped that on to the block and then finished making the case. Flip through. It doesn't, the spine doesn't behave quite normally, but you know, the book does lay flat pretty well. You get an eye, good eye going down there. And overall, I'm pretty pleased with the way this turned out. I just glued it together, so I have to be pretty gentle flipping through it like this. I used the cover for volume 4 to do the back end sheet, so it kind of shows where you start and where you end. And it worked out really well. You know, the reverse side of these covers is a more porous material than the glossy finished front of them, so it glued pretty well. And you know, I would say this is one of my better binds so far. And when you look down it like that, it's fairly even here, which is something you don't get when you bind single issues without trimming them. And I don't trim my singles when I do that, just because I don't have a great tool for it. And I have a long arm cutter, but you risk severely damaging the comics when you use them. So anyway, I hope you guys learned something from this. I sure did. Binding trade paperbacks does not seem as difficult as I thought it would be. I don't generally have much of a desire to do it though, because I'm perfectly happy with trade paperbacks. Anyway, it's Dr. Omnibus signing off. Hope you enjoyed.